Day. Pardon. International Women's Day provides an opportunity to raise awareness about the important role of women in agriculture and to advocate for gender responsive financing that address their specific needs and challenges. It also is a day to celebrate the achievements of women farmers and recognize their contributions to food security and sustainable development. Through International Women's Day, we seek to amplify the importance of women smallholder farmers and call for greater recognition and support for their vital contributions to agriculture and rural development. It's an opportunity to celebrate our progress as women and our accomplishments, and to recognize the work that we still need to be doing to achieve gender equality and equity. According to the UN Secretary General, gender equality is still 300 years away. This is a day to be mindful about the road ahead, but also a day to honor ourselves as women and the women we seek to serve in rural areas while paving the way forward to a more equitable world. My name is Zora Yagub. I am the Impact Strategy Officer here at the CFC. I feel very honored to moderate today's session. The CFC acts as a Sustainable Development Goals investor in gender, and gender plays a core role in our investments, including Coca-Cola, from whom you will hear a bit more today. Before we pass on with the program, our Managing Director, Ambassador Bilal, will provide us with welcome remarks, after which we will hear more from Cristina Duarte, the UN Special Advisor on Africa. Before I hand over, we have a short video from the UN Secretary General. So I would like to pass on the baton to Rudy, who will present us the video shortly. Thank you.
Madam President, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, friends. The session of the Commission on the Status of Women is one of the most important annual events at the United Nations. And it takes on even greater significance at a time when women's rights are being abused, threatened and violated around the world. Progress, won over decades, is vanishing before our eyes. In Afghanistan, women and girls have been erased from public life. In many places, women's sexual and reproductive rights are being rolled back. In some countries, girls go to school, risk kidnapping and assault. In others, police prey on vulnerable women they have sworn to protect. Gender equality is growing more distant. On the current track, where Newman puts it 300 years away.
Okay. That was a very short message from the UN Secretary General, reaffirming that we have a long way to go before we have gender equality. Now, I'd like to pass on the baton to our Managing Director, Ambassador Bilal. Welcome, Ambassador Bilal. Please take it away. Thank you.
Thank you, Zora. Do you hear me well?
I hear you.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Wow, 300 years.
300 years.
This is absolutely not acceptable to make the equality for women be placed 300 years back. If we briefly look back, what it was like 300 years ago. It was the time when the French Revolution, Ottomans were there too. So are the slave trade. We thought we got rid of those except for the liberal ideas born out from the French Revolution. What indeed happened, as we experience in the Common Fund on a daily basis, the root of all inequality somehow found its way into the commodity value chains as we are dealing with. Excellencies, Excellency Duarte, distinguished governors, alternate governors, executive directors and alternate, members of the consultative committee, my dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. Before we introduce you our keynote speaker, allow me to pay tribute to all guns and women in the commodity value chains who have been working so hard to feed us, make us look good, and help us live a happy family life. Allow me to share with you about the important contributions that women make in the rural agriculture value chain. The agricultural value chain is a series of interconnected activities that are essential to producing, processing, distributing, and marketing agricultural products. In many rural areas, women play a vital role in the agricultural value chain. They are involved in various stages of the value chain, from planting and harvesting to processing and marketing. Unfortunately, their contributions are often overlooked and undervalued. Firstly, women play a crucial role in the production of agricultural products. They are responsible for planting, cultivating, and harvesting crops. In some places, they also manage livestock and poultry. They have traditional knowledge about local varieties of seeds, planting techniques, and harvesting methods that have been passed down from generation to generation. As we increasingly discussing about the importance of regenerative agriculture and circularity, I would like to emphasize the role of traditional knowledge in shaping our tomorrow's agriculture. Women's traditional knowledge is important in ensuring that agriculture practices are sustainable, crops are adapted to local environments. Secondly, women are involved in processing agricultural products that play a significant role in food processing, such as grinding grains, preparing meals, and making local products like jams, pickles, and sauces. Women are also responsible for post-harvest activities such as sorting, drying, and storing crops. They are experts in preserving crops, which is essential in reducing post-harvest losses and ensuring food security. Thirdly, women are involved in marketing agricultural products. They are responsible for selling agricultural products in local markets and beyond. Women are also responsible for providing information about the quality and availability of agricultural products. However, despite their significant contributions, women still face several challenges in the rural agriculture value chain. One of the primary challenges is the lack of access to land and other productive resources. Land is a critical asset in agriculture, and women often don't have equal access to land as men. The lack of access to land limits their ability to participate in value chain, as they cannot engage in production activities. Another significant challenge is limited access to financial services. Women often do not have access to credit, insurance, savings, which limits their ability to invest in agricultural activities. Without access to financial services, women are often unable to acquire inputs, equipment, and other resources necessary for agricultural production. If women had the same access as men to productive inputs and services, they, women, the born agripreneurs, could increase the yield on their farms significantly, which would in turn reduce the number of poor and hungry people in the world. Excellencies, my dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, we are just back from the 5th United Nations Conference on the least developed country, which is still going on Doha, Qatar. Every 10 years, the world comes together to express the resolve for alleviation of poverty in the LDCs. We are told, as we wish to embark on a journey from potential to prosperity more than once, that global extreme poverty is increasing for the first time in 20 years. The pandemic and the war are set to drive nearly 150 million people into extreme poverty by the end of 2021, reversing decades of progress. Here in the Common Fund for Commodities, as you will hear from one of our investees, Ms. Gabriela Alvarez, co-founder of Colcoa. In a while, we have been putting our best efforts to empower women in our value chain so that they can make the whole value chain as clean, healthy, and beneficial for all. We are trying to do that primarily using our gender and climate lens together. It is our understanding that no amount of effort to encourage people toward practicing regenerative agriculture will work unless we get all our women, primarily those in Africa, in this. Regenerative practices such as crop diversification not only lead to healthier and more resilient and more carbon-rich soils, but can also significantly boost the livelihoods of smallholder farmers who operate off the finest financial margins and seemingly bet their entire net worth on the viability of their labor every 12 months. The program that we have had led in cocoa communities in West Africa, for example, have introduced vegetable cultivation that is exclusively led by women farmers, reducing a family's dependence on the volatile performance of a cocoa crop and bringing new skills and enfranchisement for women. More importantly, CFC is working to support women-led businesses as much as we can. The new initiative that we just launched, thanks to our governing council's approval for a new fund, the Agricultural Commodity Transformation Fund, ACT Fund, will surely try to replicate some of the very successful investments like Cocoa, Salem Exotic, etc. We are thankful to the United Nations ecosystem for their leadership in this front. Their innovation in the form of this year's theme, the Embracing Equality, is a mind-boggling reminder of how not only our conscious bias, even our unconscious biases keep women away from playing their rightful role. Equity means giving everyone equal opportunity to be successful. Equity is about giving people what they need in order to be successful. COVID has shown us painfully how miserable it will be if one-size mask is given to all, irrespective of their age. People have different starting point. Not everybody has the same needs. They have a different starting point. So instead of generalizing one-size-fits-all type policy, we have to say out loud what keeps our women from playing their rightful role. We have to be far more rigorous and scientific in measuring how good we are making in our promises to women. And surely it will have to be time-bound. It is from this spirit, our work in the Common Fund for Commodities is essentially stands on these three pillars under the guidance of our Chief of Strategy and Development and our moderator of the event today, Ms. Fatima Johara Yaqub, our Impact Strategy Officer. First, for each of our investments, we decide in advance the impact that we are going to bring forth. Secondly, we also follow up on those impacts with scientifically based impact mapping and work together in areas where we fall short. Third, our investments are surely time-bound. Eternity is not an option. So please help us to do more with your strong and sustained support for the CFC. Ladies and gentlemen, before I introduce our keynote speaker, allow me to pause for a while to acknowledge the role of the woman in my life, my mother, my sisters, my wife, and my daughter, and my colleagues. I'm happy to see my wife in the audience. She is my absolute happiness and remain inexplicably grateful to her for bearing with me for the last few decades. I promise to you, my wife, that if not for all, I will do all that is humanly possible to make every day a Women's Day for the rest of my life. Now, it is my absolute honor and privilege to introduce to you our keynote speaker, who is not only a global voice and vision for the cause of women empowerment and poverty alleviation. She is also a living proof of how empowered women can break so many ceilings to become the inspiration for millions of girls, women, boys, and men. Our keynote speaker originally came from an African state, the Republic of Cape Verde, where she served as their Minister of Finance, Planning and Public Administrations from 2006 to 2016. Our keynote speaker brings more than 36 years of leadership and strategic management experience in public policy making and in the private sector, coupled with a deep understanding of international and regional cooperations and the challenges facing African countries. Her father, Manuel Duarte, was a freedom fighter in Angola, Guinea-Bissau, and Cape Verde. She later studied in a primary school in Angola up to the age of 12. She also afterwards moved to Portugal, where she studied in economics at the Technical University of Lisbon. In the early 90s, she lived in the United States of America and got her MBA in the area of world finance and emerging global markets at the Thunderbird School of Global Management in Arizona, an advanced diploma in business administration from the Economics Institute of University of Colorado. In 2014, our keynote speaker was considered in the magazine Financial Afrique as one of the 100 most influential persons in Africa. In 2015, she was one of the 8 candidates for the president of the African Development Bank. The post would be taken by Mr. Akinwumi Adesina of Nigeria afterwards. Our keynote speaker currently serves as a member of the United Nations Committee on Experts on Public Administration and High-Level Advisory Board on Economic and Social Affairs, President Paul Kagame's Advisory Committee on Africa's Union Reforms, on board of the Alliance for a Green Revolution Africa. I can go on, she has so much. In 2020, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres appointed her as his special advisor on Africa. In her role as a special advisor to the United Nations Secretary General, she has been a motivation for us to do more for Africa and beyond. Through her dedication, foresight, and passion for the cause of women empowerment and poverty alleviation, she updated the post of USG of OSS into a mission of eradicating poverty and hunger from Africa. At the time of the pandemic, she took lead and made a number of reports, both on the devastations and necessity of support for Africa. A lot of what we now know about the devastations of COVID-19 came from her office. Her office is also instrumental in publishing a good number of innovative and courageous issues like tackling illicit financial flows in Africa, strengthening the development of the impact of remittances and diaspora in Africa, exploring the role of green hydrogens and other innovations in Africa, and also to make the African continental free trade area a vision that we would like to have for Africa. Among her many things, I'd like to thank our keynote speaker for her courage in standing in solidarity with the African country Ghana at a time of undue stress. In February 2022, Moody's, the financial house, downgraded Ghana's rating, citing challenges related to the liquidity, high risk of debt default, and weak revenue generations, despite Ghana's argument emphasizing its strong economic fundamentals. Ghana expressed reservations about Moody's rating assessment based on the agency's technical inaccuracies and omissions of important information, thus reigniting the debate about the credibility of credit rating agencies while raising the questions about robustness of their methodologies and biased opinions, especially towards African countries. It takes not only the courage and fortitude, also passion for telling the truth under any circumstances. She will be joining us from New York in her red eyes as she is just back from Doha after a very hectic schedule in the LDC 5 conference there. We are so grateful to her for her consideration in accepting our invitation, despite her all odds in terms of scheduling. Excellencies, it is my utmost pleasure and privilege to present to you a voice and vision on the empowerment of women in Africa and beyond. Her Excellency Cristina Duarte, Under Secretary General and a Special Advisor to the United Nations Secretary General. Over to you, Excellency Duarte. Our gratitude.
Good morning. Good morning to everybody. And allow me a special good morning to you, dear Ambassador Belar. What a pleasure to be with you in this webinar celebrating the International Women's Day. Before delivering my remarks, I would like to take the opportunity to tell you that I'm looking forward to our collaboration in 2023. Looking forward. Thank you. So with your permission.
Thank you.
I would like to start by thanking the Common Fund for Commodities and in particular Ambassador Belal for inviting me to participate in this discussion. If you allow me, as Special Advisor on Africa to the UN Secretary General, I will focus my intervention on the problems that affect African women and how we can work together to advance women's empowerment and gender equality in Africa. As everybody knows, Africa is at a crossroads. The COVID-19 pandemic undermined the socioeconomic structures of the continent, triggering social tensions that increased instability and led to a shrinking of civic space. And when we're just starting to see the light out of the tunnel, the triple food, energy, and financial crisis further weaken African countries' capacity to provide inclusive and equitable public services to their citizens. As in every crisis, vulnerable and marginalized populations, including women, are among those that are suffering the most. Unfortunately, this is not something new. Women across the world have been suffering for a lack of inclusivity and equality for decades. However, there is a silver lining. To a certain extent, since this crisis have put a spotlight on human capital issues, they are helping us to identify challenges that are undermining women's empowerment and gender equality, raise awareness, and take action to trigger a transformative change. The question is then, change to what? What are the things that we were doing wrong? And what are the areas that we need to promote? Changing in this case has two implications. First of all, we need to understand that equal and inclusive societies will not just be achieved through arithmetic. Numbers are important, but they do not necessarily address the root causes of problems. In this sense, for example, gender quotas need to be accompanied by an active transformation of the social norms and structures that have subdued them. This is the only way in which we'll make sure that we are not just achieving a testimonial change, but actually triggering a ripple effect that benefits women, but also other vulnerable and marginalized groups that have been traditionally excluded from political and economic power. I'm proposing an approach in which the shift in representation is not an end in itself, but actually the first step for a deep transformation in institutional culture, tone, and issues. For this shift to become a powerful tool that leads Africa to leapfrog towards sustainable development, we need more than numbers. We need a new narrative, a new discourse that places the focus of attention on building inclusive and transparent institutions and policy frameworks that empower Africa to own its present and its future. This leads me to the second point, equality. Equality is not achieved through words or token initiatives. It requires real policies that go deep into the root causes of the problem. Let me put an example. Land. Land is probably one of the most precious resources in Africa. It is estimated that between 70 and 90% of all wealth in Africa stems in some way or another from land. It is important due to the resources that we can find in it, minerals and extractives. But probably even more important due to the resources that we can generate through agriculture. Food to feed the continent and agriculture byproducts to supply Africa's industry. Do you know how much land do women own in Africa? Less than 10%. In this context, the most effective solution that we can promote to trigger change in the agriculture sector in Africa is to give women ownership of their land. This is the factor that, once addressed, will have a ripple effect. If we want to really achieve gender equality in Africa, to move from a number or a motto to actual inclusion, we need to focus our efforts on the property of economic resources. Give women the same capacity and rights to acquire and own. And I have no doubt that women will rise to the top without needing anyone to reserve one testimonial spot. Women such as Ruth Kinoti, the founder of Salam, who moved from selling cereal on her way to school to owning a food manufacturer, thanks to the support of the Common Fund for Commodities. I love the example of Salam for two reasons. First reason, it shows the importance of giving access to women to economic resources that I just referred to. Ruth had the vision of an entrepreneur, but as so many women, smallholder farmers in Africa, she did not have collateral to obtain financing for realizing her vision. The Common Fund for Commodities took a chance on that vision and provide her with access to funding to transform her business model, to industrialize her production and move from selling grain to value-added products. This is economic empowerment. This change allows Salam to multiply 10 times its total volume of produce sold in only 4 years. Second reason, the story of Salam also demonstrates how focusing gender sensitive action on key issues, such as to economic resources, creates transformative change and promotes inclusion in all spheres of life. Because Salam has continued working with smallholder farmers as primary suppliers, engaging over 40,000 smallholder farmers in 2021, and increasing their income by an average of $240 a year. This is an achievement. And it it has also focused on low-income customers, delivering a nutritious product that is affordable and is reaching over 50,000 customers in Kenya. This is the evidence that one can make business promote inclusion and helping to end hunger and poverty. In other words, creating transformative change on gender issues can lead to new ways of doing business that actively contributes to implementing the 23rd agenda. Third reason, and the third reason why I like this example is that it is a success story in the food systems value chain. Transforming food systems in Africa is a priority, not only to increase continent's resilience to external shocks, such as the current global food price, but also because food systems can play a multiplier role. And what we need to accelerate the implementation of the SDGs in the coming year is to identify and amplify initiatives that have this capacity to create impact with a ripple effect. This is the reason why the Interdepartmental Task Force on African Affairs, that I chair on behalf of the Secretary General, will be discussing food systems during 2023. And I'm confident that the Common Fund for Commodities will be bringing success stories such as Salam's that can guide our work. And it is also the reason why my office, OSA, launched last year the initiative, A Pen for a Gun, that seeks to leverage the power of food systems and in particular A Pen for a Gun is OSA's country and our proposal to advance the African Union's silencing the gun agenda. One of the key components of this initiative is its contribution to the empowerment of women and gender equality in three ways. First, by promoting the inclusion of girls in schools. Girls' schools enrollment and attendance rate dropped dramatically during secondary education. This is due to the need to contribute to their households, but also because they do not always find the kind of support they need during adolescence. School feeding programs address these issues by supporting families and taking a comprehensive approach to health in school that accompanies girls during poverty. Second, by involving women in the school feeding value chain, homegrown school feeding programs are supplied by smallholder farmers and local communities. They provide opportunities to women like Ruth to join the labor market and develop their careers. Third, by fostering women's inclusion in their community, reducing their care burden, and including them in the local community, in the local committees that are responsible for supervision and school feeding programs. One of our objectives through the A Pen for a Gun initiative is to bring together UN entities and key stakeholders with relevant expertise to maximize the impact that we can deliver through school feeding. In this regard, I believe that this is an area where we can work together to make a change in Africa's food system and advance toward the empowerment of women in the continent. Thank you again for inviting me to this exchange, and I look forward to hearing about the example of Cocoa in Columba. My dear Ambassador, back to you, and it's been a pleasure.
I'm gonna take over for now, Ms. Duarte. Thank you very much for that very thoughtful presentation of your thoughts, and also from Salem, which has been very, very helpful. Thank you for that. I would like to shortly introduce Coca-Cola. And I would like to present Gabriela Alvarez. She's the co-founder of a Colombian sustainable cocoa trader called Colcocoa. And she's also a female investee partner of the CFC. Coca-Cola has been a CFC borrower since 2021 for trade finance. The financing provided by the CFC is used to support Coca-Cola's sourcing of high quality cocoa, pardon. And this is a 50% female owned enterprise. Welcome, Gabriela. We are very honored to have you here. So please take it away. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sora, and thank you very much for the Commodity Fund for this invitation, Ambassador Bilal, and thank you, Cristina Duarte. That was a really impressive, very interesting presentation. I had the opportunity to work in some countries in Africa, and yes, it sounded so true and so urgent. So I'm very glad you have the position you have, and you have the ability to create and to push for that impact. So thank you very much. As said, I'm Gabriela Alvarez. I'm one of the founders of Colcocoa, and I also have some other hats here and there. But what I would like to talk about today is about this initiative, and just a couple of ideas or things that I think we could do in terms of pushing this agenda forward. So we want to have the first slide. The next slide is just a brief introduction of what Colcocoa is. So we are a Colombian Swiss family-based. We're all families as well. It's a private company. And our idea is, as we always say, for profit and for purpose. So what we want is, we're very connected with producers. We come from farming families from Argentina. My partner is from Colombia. And this is always at the forefront of how we are thinking about it. So it's almost like economic development through cocoa, and entrepreneur almost by accident, but pushing for this agenda forward. So we work with about 2,200 families in cacao, and we also work with cooperatives, which are our biggest ally, coffee cooperatives and cacao cooperatives. We also do several projects a year with the IDH or with the Swiss government that are looking at innovation at smallholder farms for income diversification, for social agendas, for regenerative agriculture. Very interesting. Ambassador Bilal, what you mentioned about regenerative and circular agriculture as being areas where new opportunities open. So I'm going to go back to that, but thank you very much for pointing it. So this is about Colcocoa, and we also have a few associated companies, some that are more on the impact. We also have a cadmium and soil analysis lab, a chocolate, and we also have started a direct reforestation initiative and carbon capture measurement, tracking, and compensation. So there's a few initiatives, but they're all, if you want to talk about, connected to the core, which is about rural development, impact, and creating value. We used to say when we were students, because my partner and I, we were in the same student association a few years ago, and we used to say under development is a state of mind. And it's a lot about how we put our minds and how we have the focus, the attitude, and then the networks that support this happening. But a lot of it is on us, to move. So a bit about CFC and us, and I think this was an interesting, maybe there's some people in the call, I hope, that are looking at this path. I've gotten several calls. We'll put the next slide, please. And I went back to the vision for the Common Fund for Commodities, contribute to poverty alleviation, income generation capacity, commodity producers, mitigating vulnerability. It sounds so true, and it worked. it was really true, both in the process, and here you have Peter Nielsen, that I think is also in the call, that was so instrumental at finding the way to make it work. if the fundamentals are there and this will have an impact, how do we craft this? And this took us like a year, because obviously, and correctly so, all the levels and the requirements are very high. But how do we craft this to make it work? During the process as well, there are also several people in the call here, Tia, Rebecca, there are very different people that have supported in making it happen, all the little details and how we do it. And where does this have an impact? It has a huge impact. For us, it has allowed us to access markets at comparable rates than the bigger competitors. So it's amazing. And the confidence in saying, go ahead and grow with us. So we can be confident in how we craft our commercial agreements. And this is so important. Trade finance and access to finance and access to affordable finance is such a barrier for many in our countries. And the third thing is we've gone beyond, and this was one presentation that we had, but we're with Peter, and it was about decommoditizing payment for environment services and carbon capture and other new income generation and environment impact potential. I was this morning on the deforestation regulation and how will countries, and it's going to be so difficult for SMEs in developing countries to overcome this. And how do we extend from a single company to something where we can connect with other SMEs in the world, in Africa and Asia, that are handling some of the very similar issues. And for that, I have only very, very good comments about the Common Fund for Commodities and the role in connecting these needs and articulating and supporting this. So this is really, we're very excited about this partnership and looking forward to the next steps, hopefully even beyond COLCOCOA, and in which ways we can support in your role with other players. Why is this important, particularly for women? And in the next slide, there's a few data points that you know, that you probably have seen here and there, but 700 million people live in extreme poverty and rural areas. And this is just in general, but of that, 60% of chronically hungry people are women and girls. We're a big part of the agricultural labor, but we're less likely to be wage earners. And when they are, they generally earn less than men. So there are still huge challenges in this area. And one that I think it's also very relevant for this is the access to finance. Actually, there is less access to finance for women business. And these statistics, which I did not find for other types of lending, but only 2% of new ventures female founded are backed by venture capitalists. This is really, really low. And when you look at why that access to finance is, Ms. Duarte mentioned the land rights and that collateral. These are barriers that are big. Women are less bankerized than men in the world. But then also on the other side, there's also unperceived biases in how access to credit works and operates, and what are some of those barriers and how do we overcome it? So not only in the impact on what we have, but also about how do we go about doing this. So my three points in the next slide are three learnings from the path that the journey we've been through 10 years. The first one is don't do harm, and this is very, all the people with the very best intentions, and we end up sometimes doing things that we would absolutely not do. For example, and just one example, some of you have heard about this, but our databases, the field where we have the producer, we have one field, and it generally ends up being the person that we're interviewing with their ID document because of all the land and issues and et cetera. And what happens then? Then that's the person that can sell the commodity or the cash crop in the cooperative, because that's the person authorized. That's the person invited to trainings. That's the person that can decide if they do or not. That's the person that is the owner of the rights for whatever payment for environment service, for anything else that happens in the farm. So what we want is to push to family-based agriculture. And that is the format of the family that exists. It could be, I don't know, the grandfather and the grandkid, could be LGBTQ, different genders. It could be, you tell me how your family is composed, but we are not going to say that because we just have one field in our databases. And this is already a very important one. And there's several books about what the processes are happening and the role of artificial intelligence. As we do algorithms and how we do it, the inputs and biases that we unconsciously put in, they come out. So the first one is don't do harm. Think more actively about biases that could be being done by the processes and the systems. So that's one of the things that we've learned the hard way. Second one of these things is not like the other. We tend to, when we come with agendas and development projects, we tend to almost equate the formula. And it's not the same to increase productivity, have a pruning different method, and those things have very immediate and very clear improvement from when we're thinking about evolution in social systems. And this is very different, and we need to be so much more respectful, so much more listening and acting very carefully and in conjunction with, and how do we involve and we support the change within and not from outside. And this, I think, is really, really relevant and how we look at impact. And the third one, which is very hopeful, is the new spaces and opportunities. I'm so convinced that there are new areas being opened that come from regenerative agriculture, from the expertise, as like Ambassador Bilal said, on the ancestral knowledge, but also there's a lot of things in the carbon measurement, payment for environment services, diversification of income that are very well suited to skills that many women tend to bring to the table. Careful, precision, tidying, responsibility. There's a lot of things that in rural areas, we do tend to see many women presenting the skills. And this fits really nice with some of the new things. So this is very encouraging, I would say, from our side. And from, again, our side, one of the big learnings, the most important learnings is our own role in this. And then if we go to the next slide, this is one of the projects that we have, which is a chocolate and a tablet of chocolate. You're all welcome to have hot chocolate with us anytime. And it's delicious and it comes from our farm. But it's also about pushing for the agenda of daring. Women that dare, we call it. So it's 3 projects that is supported by this chocolate, a reforestation, cacao tree for farmers, and the one that is important for today is the girls that dare. There's a lot in daring to dare. And this is a big role, and this starts already young. And this was a project that we have. So we would like to finish with that small video, if it's available. It's just 20 seconds, but in honor of the girls that dare, we have collected a series of examples. So if you have it there, it's a mini book, and that we encourage girls. That's it. So thank you very much. And I hope I would look forward to questions if there are. And again, thank you for Madame Duarte and for the CFC for the fantastic action you do at a large scale. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much, Gabriela. That was very inspiring. Thank you. Okay, great. As you said so yourself, it's time for questions. So if there are any questions from the audience, now is the right time to ask them. Do we have any questions? There's one question for you, Gabriela, And what advice would you give other women that work in agricultural and rural SMEs? What advice would you give them?
Dare to dare. Yes, I think there are resources. It takes courage to not be. We don't see sometimes some of the barriers that have been built among the ages, and it's don't take them personal. There's some things that you just have to push through and just try to build that confidence. I think some of us are very lucky in the environment we grew in with parents that saw and supported that. That's not always the case. This is really important as the community, men and women that support entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs, in building that confidence, in building that desire to move forward, and do not take the obstacles as personal. Take them as obstacles and muddle through and gain your network and find the support you need in organizations, but in people, in mentors. Do not be afraid to ask. I think they say actually women ask in conferences, you know, that like 30% of the questions and only 10% of the opening questions. So that's us. That's us that need to push that.
Yeah, great, thank you. We have another question for Ms. Duarte regarding the financial architecture in terms of gender. How do you foresee this changing over the next 10 years, and how can we leverage that in order to be more impactful?
As a secretary, thank you for the question. As the Secretary General has been very clear and vocal, it's clear to everybody that today's international financial architecture is, as he mentioned, and I'm going to use his words, is unfair and dysfunctional. Unfair and dysfunctional. Mm-hmm. This is international financial architecture. And I will get to the woman very quickly. What happened in the past 2 or 3 years is very simple. Let me provide you some numbers. As you speak, African zero bonds outstanding amount is around $140 billion. Due to an increase in interest rates, for reasons that everybody knows in this meeting, African countries have been facing with interest rates or debt service bills that are higher in 8.4 billion on an annual basis. And during the life of the Eurobond, we are talking about 84 billion. So as you speak, African countries are facing a quite dramatic situation in terms of accessing the necessary financial resource that they need. If we go to at the country level, this is exactly what I mentioned. There are at the country net, if you screen the banking sectors in Africa, in my country, you see that there is a clear bias. Actually, Gabriela has said it all. Has said it all. For a couple of reasons, women has not been accessing, has been preventing of enjoying financial inclusion. And it's very simple. When a woman does not enjoy financial inclusion, she cannot undertake an expansion trajectory. Out of question. And what is missing, besides what Gabriela has mentioned, I do believe for me, the critical issue is because women has been blocked in terms of accessing assets. This is the critical issue. When I say assets, I'm not only mentioning assets, physical assets, the collaterals, the material collaterals that any traditional bank requires, but allow me to go to intangible assets. And I'm talking about knowledge, technical knowledge. If we screen girls' participation in Africa on the STEM education, for example, the situation is quite critical. So I do believe that in order to support women's financial inclusion, we need to address collateral assets, economic assets, but we need also to address intangible assets, making women a better access to information, to knowledge, to technical knowledge, to internet, to online service, and you name it, and you name it. And the only way to deliver this, you need political will at a policy making level. You need a strong political will at a policy making level. It doesn't happen by magic now. You need policymakers with strong political will to deliver this. Back to you.
Thank you, Ms. Duarte. Thank you very much. That was very helpful. Good. This brings us to the closing remarks of our Managing Director, Ambassador Bilal. Please take it away. Thank you.
No more questions?
No more questions.
Yeah, thank you. It doesn't mean that there is any less interest. Also, the kind of curiosity that has been aroused by these two wonderful speakers, Excellency Duarte and Ms. Alvarez, I think we are eternally grateful to both of you, because in essentially what you said today is what we have been kind of fighting with for last 33 years in the CFC. Because our struggle is to make the finance cheaper and de-risked. And taking the advantage of your kind presence, we would like to say it loud that very little help is forthcoming in these two sectors. We would like to seek your good office that how we can continue to work together, more importantly with the likes of Bretton Woods system, to make this finance more cheaper. In the case of de-risking, we don't think even we qualify with our ticket size of 1.5 to 2 million euro for any kind of effective grantee scheme that is available in the market and being dealt by the International Monetary Funds and the others. If there is, I think still we need to make it much more accessible than what it is. So if we really want to bring the real essence and energy of our women, we have to provide them with these resources. I can quote this Nobel laureate Abhijit Banerjee, who said it very well, and in a sense he kind of reiterated what years ago has been said by another Nobel laureate from India, Mr. Amartya Sen, that all you need in order to bring forth their latent capacity is to provide them with the resources. And Abhijit Banerjee put it very directly that give them money. And we, the people in our position, I think we don't have any idea that how a rural woman can make use of $50 US in so many ways that we cannot even think of. They are so good. And thank you, Excellency Duarte. I think we really, really appreciate the way that you try to highlight the essential, our job of leapfrogging this African development. I think it is very important why Africa is not that if we are biased towards Africa, that means we are biased towards the whole development goals. Because without leveraging those people who are in poverty in Africa, I think we cannot expect to get the essence of our sustainable development goals even minimally. So I think when you said about this equality and less than 10% of women has land entitlement, these are the priorities that we have to get it right. And here in the CFC, Excellency Duarte, you'll be happy to know that only in our last executive board, we approved a proposal and investment for land mapping through using geographic information system, remote sensing in Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, and Indonesia. And this is something that we did despite our all kind of internal limitations, because normally we try to remain with our ticket size of 1.5 to 2 million US dollar because of their administrative overhead. But in this case, we came down to 300,000 because we thought that this is the right thing to do. And now will try to work with them so that the information they get through this land mapping that can be fed back to the respective governments of Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, and Indonesia for better land entitlement for the women in this place. So we can tell you that we are not only preaching, we are in fact practicing here in the CFC so that we can really bring these things. And the example that you brought together for the Salem, I think I am so inspired and encouraged to know about this project of Salem and Ms. Ruth Kenoti, that we even sponsored her as a speaker in the LDC5 conference, because we thought that people should get to see and know about her journey. And we salute you, Madam Duarte, that you did a kind of big favor to us to highlighting these things. We would like her to be seen. We'd like that of Ms. Alvarez as well, so that our millions of girls and women can get inspiration from people like you. So Ms. Alvarez, with that note, I also thank you, not only for being here, but also for being such an inspiration. You have said that it is yes, it is business, but with a sense of purpose. And this is what in the CFC is our priority. We know about business, but we want to prioritize those business with a purpose, because we came to understanding that governments with all their resources is still very kind of tiny player when it comes to the market. It is essentially to the hand of private sectors, our impact investors. So the likes of you, Ms. Alvarez, is what we would like to see in multiple. And if there is any kind of capacity for us to cloning people like you and printing, I think we would have done it in abundance so that other gets inspiration from you. I just would like to thank again.
Ambassador Bilal, we cannot hear you, but
Okay, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay,
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I would like to ask everyone to please turn on their camera for the last Kodak moment of this event, as we will share it with our members on LinkedIn and Facebook. So if you could please allow us to have a moment for a photo, for a group photo, then that would be great. Thank you very much. Rebecca, please.
Okay, as you take this photo, let me conclude again, thanking all the audience and participants. I can see that a lot of our distinguished ambassadors and our governors and our members of consultative committee are in the audience, despite the fact that there are multiple events and that there is conflicting schedules. We are also happy to see that there is a race for celebrating this day, but we would like to see that this celebration is also backed up with real action. And this is where I think we find enough inspirations from the likes of Excellency Duarte, Ms. Alvarez, and also I would like to thank my colleague in the Common Fund, including not all but exclusively Ms. Fatima Yaqub also, for their hard work to pull it up, because we know that arranging an event like this, it takes a lot of coordination and a lot of work. Before I conclude, I'd just like to say the same thing that what my late mother said to me, that please don't consider an woman only as commodity. And it is not only for pleasures. Woman is something that will make or break your life, that's true. But for a man, forget about the woman, but try to be the best person through your respect and dedications to helping them to achieve whatever they are potential to be. So in our journey from prosperity to potential, we once again thank you all for being part of this journey, and we would remain on the lookout if any people have any excellent idea to do more for the women. Please feel free to let us know. On the 20th of March, we will have our next webinar for our call for proposals. Please join us there and let us know if you have any exciting idea so that we can do something together. Once again, thank you all. Excellency Duarte, we remain grateful to you for your kind time, and Ms. Alvarez, the same goes to you and for all members of our audience. Thank you.
Thanks. I think, Rebecca, that the picture has been taken, correct?
Indeed it has. Thank you for checking, Zara.
Okay, great. Well, this concludes our webinar. The recording will be sent afterwards. I want to thank you, everyone, and wishing you a lovely Women's Day. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay.